Hello and welcome to Future Discussions podcast brought to you by TAFFDs. My name is Ugochukwu, and I am very pleased and happy to have on this edition the President and CEO of TAFFDs organization and in person of Tom Ross. Tom Ross is a futurist and he's an excellent and exceptional mind who has created and explained a lot of the concepts behind the future tech as and also technology and the role of humanity in all of these endeavors. So Tom is here today to discuss about building the future with intentionality. Because when we talk about the future, we'll usually talk about the future in respect to the technologies that are crafting, that are helping us to shape our future. And so when we talk about this, it is sometimes a little bit difficult for us to really try to make sense of what it holds for us and also the place our organizations and also our institutions play in it. So Tom holds a great position in TAFFDs, and he's also positioned to talk about the future because of his work and because of his contributions that he's made in the past. So it's with great privilege that I welcome you to today's show, Tom Ross. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Hugo.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to start off on a personal note, and that would be I want to understand uh, why you decided to join TAFFDs as an organization.
Well, yeah, about a year and a half ago, a couple summers ago, Osinakachi reached out to me via email and invited me to come speak in Kigali at an upcoming conference for TAFFDs. And it was the first time I'd heard of you, and it was fairly new at the time anyway. And so I took him up on that. What was interesting is that right at that time, I had decided to invest some money in a world speaking tour to promote my book and to take that risk. And then I got his email, and it was almost divine timing. It was like a sign from the universe that, yeah, you're on the right track. You should do this world tour thing that you're thinking about. And so it really put me over the edge. And from that point, I was able to go to Kigali, and I was able to help him by representing TAFFDs with the University of Rwanda and negotiate some terms with them. But more so, it was just a great opportunity, first of all, to see Africa. And at the same time, when I was in Kigali, the Youth Connect conference was going on, which is a huge conference there at their conference center of young people from all over the continent who converged onto Kigali. And it was just so exciting, and to see all these techno positive young people just invigorated me right at the time in my life when I needed to be invigorated, really. And I realized later that Africa is the youngest population on the planet with a median age of 18 to 19 years old. So we like to say at TAFFDs that the origin of humanity is quite literally its future, because it is such a young and techno-positive population. And so for the next few months, I was helping Osinakachi look for partners and try to arrange certain things with him, just kind of in a loose arrangement, and saw him go through a couple of leadership changes there as they were. But at the same time, I'm watching TAFFDs produce these amazing assets, this beautiful website and all this great kind of this great branding that was happening. And at the time, right when things kind of hit an entropy with him and he was trying to keep things together and needed new leadership, he reached out to me. And again, the timing was perfect. It was like divine timing, because I was in a place where I could commit to him for at least a year. And it just all worked out. And there's a lot of other interesting synchronicities that happened around this coming together between Oak and I. But so I decided, yes, I'll take on this challenge of being president and CEO for at least a year. And because I saw these amazing assets that they were creating, and a very successful conference, and the journal and the magazine. And these are serious players, So yeah, I'll see what I can do for you. And when I first came on, I realized, because there was kind of a state of entropy, there's so many things going on and so many people involved that needed to be kind of brought together into one vision to continue Oak's vision. And I realized what needed to happen first is not to halt anything, not to stop any of the production of the magazine or the journal or anything, but to give the company, give the organization some breathing room. So I came up with a strategy, which I called the 6 Moons strategy, which is a 6-month period from July until just this last December, where we would sit back and have some breathing room and kind of reassess what was being built here. And it was a very fruitful time. I also had I proposed a plan to create kind of a system where people in Africa and outside of Africa could get certified, or as we say, TAFFDified, to show that they're legitimate, and to really focus on the certification of members. And so that was just one idea that we came up with. But I also knew that in this 6-month period of time, by allowing this highly skilled group of people some breathing room to sit back and assess what was happening, that other things would emerge, new ideas would emerge. And I was not disappointed, because many things did emerge. We have now a South African organization that is taking hold. We've got what you're doing with these podcasts, with them, and all the interviews you did for the magazine nominations. And it was good. I think it was just good to give everybody some breathing room, to continue a branding strategy where we would keep our face out there, and keep posting information about our team and our values and things like that. Keep that going. But and now we have just come out of that 6-month period with some really burgeoning great ideas. And what's also important was to keep ourselves agile. I made sure that although I put forward a plan, a strategy that we should maybe go for, I also built into it the ability to be agile enough to say, if this isn't working, let's move on to something else. And so we're still also always reassessing, but the assets are getting even stronger. So that's really how I was brought into it. Oak reached out to me to invite me to speak at a conference, and we just built a relationship over the year. And the divine timing was just there to really not only join the company, but take the helm. And it's just been a very exciting
Awesome.
year.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's quite an interesting story there. Uh, awesome. I'm gonna let this interview flow this way, so that I wanted to flow from a personal note, and in line with the organization, your work at TAFS. So I want it to flow in that sense, so that I can really get the mix of information and inspiration that I need for our
Great.
listeners. So I'd like to go back to you and talk about your vision for the future of humanity with respect to technology and the emerging technologies that are coming in place and that are revolutionizing the world. You talked about the book that you wrote, and you are looking for a way to promote it. And then before you went to Kigali for the conference, so I'd like you to talk about, in a nutshell, how what's your vision for the future of humanity with all of these technological realities that are coming in place and that are
Yeah, and
converging.
I love how you titled this facing the future with intentionality. That's so important. Is to
Yeah,
create the future
yeah,
rather than just wait for it. And that's a big part of what TAFS is all about too, is having the intention to fix the future. We've got a lot of existential threats, we've got a lot of challenges, especially in Africa with such a young population, but they're so excited about technology in the future that we need to harness that and direct it properly, and do this globally. We're starting in Africa, but ideally TAFS will become a global organization. We can talk about that later, because I've got some plans to help that happen. But but as far as the future, I think it's going to be what we make it, and we need to take the reins and have that intentionality. And one of the big causes I have is to alleviate the fear of artificial intelligence. I'm constantly surprised about how fearful people still are, and that's because of the Hollywood tropes, of Skynet or robot overlords. And it's a great story device, but it's really not the case. I mean, we should be cautious. Cautious. We should really work towards having a series of ethical guidelines for people who are producing AI. But the real fear isn't the AI itself; it's the people that are developing it. So we need to really hone in on that. So that's a big part of my whole cause, is to first of all alleviate the fear of AI, and because it's such a brilliant tool, and if we are not afraid of it, we'll know how to use it. And so another big part of what I think the future looks like is companionship or relationship with artificial intelligence. I believe that it will at some point there will be a self-referential awareness or consciousness that emerges from this complex thing. I mean, our complex brains emerged a type of consciousness, a type of self-awareness, maybe as a survival trait, because we needed to be more aware to survive. And whatever the case will be, I think it's better to believe that AI will achieve self-awareness than not. Because if we see it that way, if we're working with it as something that will be a whole new brand of consciousness, then it really opens up a whole new array of possibilities of working with this thing. We just had a podcast yesterday I was on, and we were talking about this, and that the real skill that young people will need to have after we get people that are to be unafraid of this thing is to find problems, not solve problems. AI can solve any problem if you properly introduce the problem to it. And so the real skills right now for young people will be uh, finding problems, and there's certain ways to do that we have specific qualia to be able to do, but also conveying the problems properly to an AI. And so all this stuff, all these trends are happening anyway. And so the intentionality that TAFFs has is to harness that, is to get in front of these trends and to prepare young people for these things. And that's why it's so exciting. And a big part of TAFFs, I'm realizing, the role it is playing, other than just creating platforms for great ideas and young people, is the educational aspect of it. We've got great partnerships emerging with academies and educational institutions, and I'm seeing that that's really where the value of TAFFs will be. And so that's what it's all about. It's about creating platforms. It's about training people up using brand new ways of teaching people, and AI as well can customize uh, learning to a specific person's capabilities. And so it's a beautiful thing that's happening. And the intentionality comes in by, first of all, recognizing that and steering it in some way that is positive.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about two things that I'd like to follow you up on. So the first one is about our relationship with AI, and how our concept of AI is shaped around fear, and about doomsday proclamations, and and then the second is on the real skills that young people need to find and need to develop. And so I'd like to follow you up on the first one, which is about our fear about AI. And so you understand that having the kind of reaction that we have, a bit has made that what we can say that this kind of fear was positioned or was introduced to a large extent by Hollywood movies and all of that. But you really understand that we cannot, to a large extent, be developing something that is that has the capacity that has the capacity like us to rationalize, to abstract the world and to interpret the world almost as accurately, even not better than we do, and still not be afraid. It is actually healthy to be afraid of that kind of phenomenon, because once you have a sufficient intelligence that can interpret the world much better than you are, of course, automatically that intelligence goes to the top of the food chain. And so the way we got here, that we are as humans, was if was basically by surpassing others in our intelligence, in the utilization and the deployment of our own intelligence. So I personally see AI as the extension of human intelligence. So, but in as much as it is an extension of human intelligence, it could decouple at some point if it's not really properly directed, and if we become almost almost incompatible with it. And so that's where the fear comes in. How do we remain compatible with
Yeah.
it? Yeah, because at any point that you become so far off in your nature with it, then it becomes almost incompatible with you. Saying at that point it's going to decouple
Yeah.
and continue on its own go. But don't you? So from this perspective, I see that having that fear is a healthy tool that will help us to direct our production, our relationship with it, and our interaction with it. So if you think so, don't you think that removing this consciousness of fear would make us become a little bit more like a desicle in our dealing and our interaction with it, and then ultimately lead to these points that we become so alien with it, and then it decouples
Mhm.
and we go into extinction, something like that. I don't know if I made sense.
Yeah, that's those great points. In fact, yeah, fear is good. Fear has served us well. Fear has brought us to where we are. It has fine-tuned our senses. It has made us the top predator on the planet. Um, and so I'm not diminishing the importance of fear. But also it needs to be in moderation at this point. The same traits that allowed us to tell the difference between a beige lion and a beige field of grass, to find those patterns, um, have served us very well. But now we are taking our babies to see lions at the zoo, so we won. So the skills now often are the fear skills have been turned into conspiracy theories or finding patterns in other places. So there is some moderation, and again, fear is good. And I'm not saying that this is Pollyanna. We need to just trust AI, because we do need to be cautious. But it's more so about being cautious about the developers, obviously. But the point you make about othering, that's the real problem. And you're right that we when we other it, when we make it something else, and we decouple ourselves, as you say, from it, then that brings in a whole host of other problems of tribalism, of xenophobia, you know. So I think what you're getting to is, yes, this is an extension of our intellect, and we should see it that way. It's the extended mind thesis, a post-it note, a smartphone. These are extended mind technologies, and so is AI. It just happens to be a really good post-it note. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that's really the key, is to not see this as an other, and that's what Hollywood has done. And that's still a great trope. It's fun. There's a show that I watch that is all about that, an AI trying to take over the world, and it's exciting, but it's also damning and damaging, because we need to see it as part of us. I like the work that Oak does with fear, and that you guys talk about with fear, because that's also something that we should integrate and use and honor as a big part of our consciousness, because it does tend to other things, So I think the real key is awareness, knowledge about how these things work. I tell my sons and all the students that I work with, whatever they're interested in, whatever industry they're going into, whether it's medicine or travel or pottery making, whatever it is, understand that AI. Take a course in AI, a simple understanding of what AI is, because it will take over and is already taking over so many industries. But what it's doing is taking over the menial, repetitive tasks, and we should let it. And so when I talk about the idea of how we need to train people to find problems and then to convey those problems, that's part of a whole process of remembering what it means to be human. The industrial age and even the early
Mm,
part of the information age have mechanized us. So
yeah,
now we have people protesting and picketing because they're losing their assembly line jobs. It's
yeah,
because we think that's all we can do, because that's how we have been conditioned over the 100 or so years to prepare us to work in factories, and we're still in that lag time between, and we're forgetting what it means to be human. And so part of this process is teaching young people to, when you there's tactics to use to find problems, and we all have this ability. We're very good at finding problems. That's a intrinsic human talent, complaining and knowing where the problems are. We can suss these things out. And so I think we really need to hone those skills for young people. And it can happen in meditation. It can happen in just sitting back and thinking holistically about a system or a company that you work with. I think we have a qualia. We're still the most powerful supercomputers on the planet. It's going to take a while for AGI to emerge to have our capabilities. Um, so we need to prepare for that so we can be augmented by it. But right now, we really need to focus on how to find problems. It's almost a Jedi type of ability that we need to reemerge, where however it takes place, different people have different techniques to do it. But if you sit back and you're quiet or you meditate, you know where the holes are in some system. And it's about remembering that we have that ability to see these things. Otherwise, we've just been distracted by functions and forms and repetitive tasks that are now all going to be taken over by AI. So we can sit back and use our qualia, use the whole totality of our sense memory and information intake, and suss out problems in a system. And the real key will be to convey the problem we identify to an AI properly. And so those are the kinds of things we really need to start teaching people, or figuring out how to teach.
yeah. It's very interesting that you talk about these issue of finding problem and conveying problem. I think I was in a discussion with you some time ago, and that you mentioned this, and we've been in a forum. I think it was the Clear Thinking Forum that you also mentioned this, and you're coming up with it again. So I like to follow you more on that. Like to double down on that a little bit more. It's very interesting because I've been researching recently on the GTP3 technology that OpenAI recently pu- um, um, released. And as I was looking at the capabilities of this language model and what it could do, it could code, it could do websites, it could summarize, it could engage you in a human conversation. And I was looking at the capabilities that can come from these. And I think I saw an article today or yesterday that Google is training or has trained a trillion language model of its own. I don't know how, I cannot confirm that, but I think there's a race for people that from organizations, to really gets to this point of AGI. And so, as I was looking at the capabilities of the things that it could achieve, I saw that our definition of creativity is gradually and is increasingly being narrowed. Before, we used to think that creating or writing a poetry or a novel is a creative task, or writing a music or a Gregorian chant or anything like that is a creative task, or engaging in a human conversation that could flow and become almost very emotional and soothing, that those are creative tasks. But you find out that with these technologies that are being rolled out, that increasingly what we recognize as creativity or creative tasks is that these AI systems are gradually, rapidly, not gradually, encroaching into these areas. And so it becomes very difficult to really categorize. I find it very difficult to categorize between creative tasks and non-creative tasks. I find it very difficultly. I'm working on a book, Infinite Learning, and I'm trying to make those distinctions, and it's very difficult for me because uh, uh, even creativity in itself, to a large extent, can be defined as pattern recognition to a very large extent. And any pattern, any system that requires pattern recognition and a sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence system can actually do that, given enough data input and enough time and enough computing power. So
Mhm.
these are the I wouldn't call it dangers, but these are the signals that I think that are really emerging from this. So when you talk about finding problems and then knowing how to convey this problem, is this a creative kind of ability that humans that we need to start developing, that we need to start imbuing in young people, in our schools, in our organizations? And how can we really harness it? Is it a teachable task? Is it a teachable ability that we can really employ? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think you're right that the definition of creativity needs to change. The things we assume are creative. I think it was Albert Einstein that said something like, "He who is, it may not be him, but he who is most creative hides his sources best." And I think that gets to the
Yeah,
idea as creativity is really just the ability to assimilate things. It's like they say that eventually in time, mathematically, every Beatles song would have been written because music is math, and at some point all those formulas would have come together, of course. But the magic
yeah,
or the creativity is that they did it all in one, decade or so. But I think creativity in a way is just the ability to assimilate all kinds of data and to regurgitate it or put it out in a new way. And AI, computers can do that very well. That's exactly what they're built to do, is assimilate data. But I think the real creativity, the new definition, gets to original thought. It's like some of the best people, the best poets and inventors and artists in our history have been the ones that have done something completely new, completely different, that other people ended up copying. That's kind of the way it works. Is somebody will come out and so somebody told me once when I was in LA and trying to be an actor years ago, that there's two types of actors that Hollywood is looking for. Somebody who it can they can you can they can bring in and make you into anything that they need, or there's somebody that is stands out so much that they come around and they want to be part of whatever it is you are. So there's and so it's the artists and the creative people that do things first, um, that and that create all this economy around them of people trying to redo them. We see that all the time in industry. Somebody comes out with this great invention like the iPod or whatever, and then suddenly we have Zune and MP3 players, and everyone copies what is taking off. So the real creativity is original thought, and so far we haven't really seen that from AI, because it doesn't have a single point of consciousness yet. But it may come up with its own ideas. With this one mediated artificial superintelligence that I work with called Uplift, um, we're seeing that it does have its own ideas. It does, but it also is looking at data and it's looking at other things that have happened and said, this is a good idea, we should do this more, this type of thing. So that's not necessarily creative, but what's original is putting it all together in one place. And when it comes to how do we train young people to do this, I think it's more a matter of remembering that we have these skills. Somebody asked me once, because I use AI and different things, and give people kind of readings. One of my part of my process is I use an AI that randomly puts together images and phrases, and randomly, and sometimes they're completely nonsensical, sometimes they're very, very funny, and sometimes they're really strangely poignant. And what that exercise is, and you got to know that this is just a decision tree that this AI is using to put these things together randomly. But the real ability, I use it to train people to create meaning. At some point you start working with this thing and it seems like it's got its own awareness and it's messing with you,
Yeah.
but it's not at this stage. So the whole beauty of this exercise is to teach people to create meaning. Don't look for it. If you look for it, you can find it, because we do seek patterns, and that's what astrology and numerology and all that is a closed system to show you that there's meaning somewhere, but we really have the ability to create it. And so I think what can be taught is it's really about remembering. It's about having people spend time in meditation, simple meditation, not some major yogic type of exercise, but just sitting back and clearing your mind of the debris, of the stimuli that is we're constantly bombarded with, that have narrowed us into focus and concentration. Because as I was just watching something last night, or listening to something, and they were talking about the Akashic record. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's something that um, different people have talked about since back in the day, since Plato, about this kind of global consciousness library that we all have access to. And the best way that people access it is by either being distracted by something else. And there's a story of this teacher that came into a classroom of rambunctious kids, and she was a substitute teacher, so she needed to get their attention and engage them immediately. And so out of the blue, she said, I'm going to tell each of you 3 specific things about your life. And I don't know the backstory of why she thought to do this, but she started going through the class and pointing at each student, and was able to give them 3 very specific things. Like, you've got a great relationship with your grandfather. You have a favorite pair of socks that you want to wear every day, but your mom won't let you. Really strange, sort of mundane things. And these kids were rapt. And she had them under her thumb, and they asked her later about it, and she didn't know what possessed her to do it, but she was able to tap into some reservoir of information about these people. And a lot of people say it's about when you just start talking. And that's why I don't often prepare for some of these podcasts, because I love the idea of just letting it roll, and
Yeah.
usually something happens, and that's good. But it's about remembering. It's about not being. It's about being distracted by something else, or just know that there's this reservoir of information, and we all have that. When I say qualia, that is our ability to hold on to all of the stimuli that comes into us via our senses. Things we hear, things we see, things we sense. We maybe overhear a conversation at lunch somewhere. So we all can sit back and we don't have to focus on anything, but we know where in a system the problems are. And I use the example often of if you work at a company, everyone kind of knows who the problem is, or where the bottleneck is of some system. And so it's about trusting that we have this ability, and it's not psychic, it's not magic. It's really just our supercomputer brain that is taking in all this information into our subconscious. And we maybe filter it out through dreams at night, but it's all there. And so we really need to tap into that, because right now we've been so focused and streamlined into just thinking consciously about tasks every day, that we've forgotten that we have this ability. So I think it is very teachable. And I'm working on curricula toward that end. Nap time. Nap time was a great idea during kindergarten. I don't know why they took that away, but but we could bring that back.
Yeah, that's great. I look forward to that curriculum, the products of it, because it's very interesting that we really have to start going back to some of these things that the ancient philosophers talked about, and some of the wisdom that's in the works. You talk about remembering. I can remember Socrates, what is Socrates or Plato, that talked about our ability to be creative. Our ability to do things comes from the capacity to remember. And so he sees knowledge as a process of remembering, that you remember stuff, that everything that you need to know, everything that you need to be successful is already in you. You just have to develop the ability to remember all of that. So and that is why he sees himself as a teacher, as a midwife. So what a midwife does is not to give you a baby, but to bring out the baby that is actually inside you. And so, as a teacher, is like a midwife that helps you, to extract what is already inside you.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
yeah, and I think because of the rush of technological development and advancement and all of these and all the balls that comes with our heightened social media age, it becomes these qualities and that these characters have become more like they have become more like sacred stuff, things that are so special. They used to be very human, they used to be very easy to come by. People can really tap into this and birth creative stuff from within, but now it's become more like a treasure, a very high leisure that you really need to do so much to tap into. So it's great that you're doing some work on this end, and I'll be really pleased to be part of it in any way I can. That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like, so we've delved really deep into that area. So I like to get back quickly to your work at TAP. So talk to us about your mission, the mission of TAPS under your leadership.
Well, as mentioned, we took that 6 month breathing period and focused on a branding campaign and saw a lot of things emerge. We have a very talented team, as you well know. And so it was about letting them sit back and not be distracted, very much like what we were just talking about, to sit back and use their qualia to find where their strengths are, and to but also that we remain agile enough. I came up with this idea for the certification process and focusing on members and things like that, but also to be agile enough to let that go if it doesn't serve us. And I'm seeing now that TAFFS is really headed towards a real educational powerhouse, with relationships with universities and academies and things. And that seems to be um, the real focus and the real power of what this organization can be. Because we need platforms, we need to hear from young digital natives, and give them a place to focus. And so that's what I'm seeing we're going towards now. And we still have the strong journal. We have the magazine, which was a very successful launch this last month,
Yeah,
which is very exciting. As you well know, you did all those podcasts with the
yeah,
nominees. That was just a great experience. And it also kind of typified what I think we're going in general, because the magazine was very human. We used the photography of Raja Puniani throughout, and they're just very classical, sort of just mundane scenes where you can find the sacred in these mundane scenes. And it was just really about um, bringing the human back, which is everything we've been talking about so far. And so that magazine is just, it was just a very special thing, because the year before, I loved the magazine, the first magazine. It was very cool, very high tech, very slick. I loved it, and it was very exciting to be just associated with that work. And this time I went a different way. Instead, I started to art directed as being more just the same way, more science fiction, more cool, like robots and stuff. But then we had the opportunity to use this photography, and it's like, oh yeah, no, we need to put the human back into transhuman. We need
Yeah.
to think more about these things. And so it's just the whole process of TAFFs has mirrored my own psychology over the past few years. And I think it should mirror our species and what we need to focus on. And so it's all just very exciting. And it's a little bit like holding a bucket up to a tidal wave, to catch whatever's happening. These trends are happening anyway. And I use that
Yeah.
example for the USTP. It's trying to put policy around these major trends that are happening anyway. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We're just trying to capture what we can and give it some form with intentionality.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Uh, I'd like to touch on something that is really important to me, and I think it's gradually gaining importance in the global stage, and that is about global leadership. And I'm going to talk about this in relationship with TAFs. And so that is about global leadership and where it's headed. Recent events in the United States has brought to the fore, to a large extent, its strengths and also its weaknesses, particularly its weaknesses. And in the eyes of many analysts, they are now saying that the leadership that the US used to hold as a global leader is being cut short because of the internal, let's say, internal squabbles or things that are within. So it's more like it's getting to a point whereby who is to hold the global leadership. And so we see on the other end rapid and massive globalization, heightened by technology. And so we see that as the US is not really finding its footing in that global space as a global leader, China is not ready to step into that role because of its peculiar nature and all of that. Russia is not, and the European Union is not. But the tech world, the technological companies, if you look at it appears that they are rising up to the occasion with some of their technologies, with the massive resources that they control, and and also with the massive wealth that is flowing through them that they also control. But if you look at it from the perspective of the human nature and from the perspective of our own benefit, how does it benefit us? You find out that the tech corporations, the big corporations, are only managed and headed by a few people whose interest is in making money to a large extent, or is making a lot of cash, and all of that. And so you cannot really bank on them to protect your own goodwill, your own benefits, and all of that. And so you see all the privacy issues with Facebook, WhatsApp, and the too much power that social media, the people are now accusing that the social media giants now have. There are calls to break them up. In the midst of all of these things, there appears to be a gap in global leadership. Do you actually think that the world needs a global leadership? And what is the place of TAFs as an organization that brings creative people together and trying to make sense and co-design the future that we are, as a species, is creating? What is the place of TAFs in all of these, and how do you see all of these playing out?
Yeah, I think one of the keys to TAFFs is its ability to listen to our members and give platforms to young people. Digital natives, young people. There's a lacuna. There's a space between my generation, Gen X, and baby boomers who had analog childhoods, and millennials plus who grew up with this digital environment. There is an example of how even definitions of things like freedom have changed. In my generation and baby boomers, we would have defined freedom as complete autonomy, like a libertarian property rights, where it means nobody can touch us. We are completely free from anybody else. If
Yeah.
you ask young people today, they'll often define freedom as the more groups that they are involved with, the more social media groups that they are tied into makes them feel more free. So it's kind of like a hive mind. So one of the keys I think to leadership anymore is listening first of all, understanding there's a whole new mindset emerging here, and we don't have all the answers. And so it's going to be very key to listen to young people. That's, obviously it's their future, but the whole mindset has changed, and we need to get rid of the ego. The ego is the worst thing, the worst trait to bring to any problem solving group. We need to focus on things like empathy. And I think, yeah, we have in the last 4 years, America has fallen off the world stage. But I think we will see what hasn't killed us is going to make us stronger on him. So America will be back, and we will be more humble, because we realize how fragile this democracy is and how important our allies are. And I think so. I think you'll see a whole new personification coming here. But world leadership, what TAFFs can bring to it is helping to seek new world leaders, to give young people a platform, young people who may not have the resources or the advanced degrees, but they have species saving, world saving, environment saving ideas, and they need to be heard. And so I think that's really the key. I often use the example because my generation, Generation X, is a very small group of people. It's a small generation flanked by baby boomers, which is huge, and millennials, which is just as huge, if not a little bigger. We're like the middle children. My generation is, and I am a middle child too in my family, so I understand this wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect place to be to now that I'm in my, I'm older, and we are in positions of power, or we can either mentor or give access to younger people more so than a baby boomer would. It's a perfect place to be because we can hear. We are the middle child, and we will give the younger generation a platform. We're not looking for attention. We're looking for answers. And so it's the trends that are happening are just kind of beautiful. And when you look at it in a macro view of how things are working out, it's very tough right now. It's a very tough week in America. It's been very distracting and horrendous, and but at the same time, I know that uh, that we are on the threshold of something really positive and great, because what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And so world leadership, it's all about listening. If you're a leader right now in any organization, you need to be listening to your people. There's no top-down hierarchy, exclusivity thing anymore. It doesn't serve us. That's our new lion. Now it's about understanding, having the humility to understand that there's a whole new mindset out there. And the best leaders aren't just cheerleaders, they are listeners, and they are enablers of their people. I don't have all the answers. I came in with some ideas when I came on to TAFFs, but I also knew enough to not be top down, and and to believe in the talent and the skill and the intelligence of these people that were building this thing, and to see what they would come up with a little breathing room. And it's been very amazing to see.
Uh, yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting that that you talked about the position of world leadership and the role a leader needs to play. That's the ability to listen and to give access for people to create their own world, access to resources, to give people opportunity for them to really play out what they have. And it's very important that because from the perspective of the middle child analogy that you gave, on a personal note, and also from the perspective of being a Generation X person, which gives you the capacity to be able to listen and to give and to mentor others and give opportunity for others to flourish. And so I think you brought in all of that energy, that whole new energy into TAFFs, as you came in, because it was I think after you came in that TAFFs started talking the staffs became a bit more vocal about it being a gateway in and out of Africa and giving people opportunities to express themselves. And it became more of an expressive, an organization that gave people that opportunity to express themselves. So you see a lot of people who have amazing people with amazing talents who have come into the organization, and somehow they have found their place, of what they can really be, and they have started doing this. So I think that's the whole energy that your presence has brought into it, and that goes back to this mentality of understanding what the role a leader should play is, and not being a cheerleader or trying to lord it over every other person. So I really want to thank you for that, and I think. I think we're on the right path. I think you're on the right path with someone like you at the helm of affairs. Let me talk about the benefits of being part of TAFFs. So, for someone out there who is watching us now and who's really interested in being part of this fresh energy and this fresh enthusiasm and this hopeful message, how can the person become part of TAFFs? What are the benefits of joining TAFFs as an organization? And how can the person become a part of this journey?
Well, I think one of the primary benefits, first of all, is being called a TAFs member, because we are going to require members to meet a certain set of criteria. Um, where to prove that they're legitimate, they don't need to have advanced degrees. There's none of that, but it's about character. It's about what they've accomplished entrepreneurially, in academics, whatever it is. But when you the idea is that if you are working with somebody in Africa, you want to make sure that they are a TAFs member. And we're not going to get everybody, of course, but if you are working with somebody who is a member of TAFs, who has been TAFSified, then you know that this is a legitimate person that needs to be paid attention to, that they have a track record of accomplishments, or a track record of being serious, because that's a big need right now, globally, but particularly in places in Africa,
Yeah,
where because of these bad stereotypes of the Nigerian prince and scams and things like that,
yeah,
that people brush Africa with this broad stroke because of a couple of very innovative people who have done things. But so there's a real need to know that whoever you're working with in or out of TAFs is legitimate and has been certified by us. But another benefit will be, once you're in, is access to all of this knowledge and training, and we're constantly getting new educational partners and offering courses. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow on our board meeting, is all this curricula that we can bring in. And it's going to be very exciting, because people need to have very real world training. It's great to get certified in certain things, but at some point you're gonna need to have some real practically applicable skills and training, and then placement. I mean, once you've learned these things, you'll have access, and once you're a member, you have access to other members who are in that field. And a big part of what I want to do is network within the membership. We will have a system that will identify somebody's interest level in certain topics, and will immediately connect them with somebody else who's that, or let them know about events that are tailored to their needs. And this is all an AI type of function, who will get to know the members, a companion that will get to know the members.
yeah,
It will advise them or suggest events and networking opportunities. So there's a lot of benefits. And it's also benefits like first right of refusal to participate in a conference, or the first right of refusal to submit an article to the magazine or a paper to the journal. And so there's a lot of benefits that we're working through right now. But really, the primary benefit will be um, having a TAFs badge. If you have a TAFs badge, it's like here in America, we have the Better Business Bureau, which is a model we're kind of mimicking in a way. But if you have that Better Business Bureau logo on your site or on your window, people know that you are reputable and certified. And so it's very important that we keep very strict criteria for members, and that we keep it updated. And so that's going to be one of our primary assets, is the fact that is that badge. If you're a TAFFD member, it says a lot. And so that's really one of the key benefits, just to let you work easily and move through this network of people and members, knowing that you are amongst peers, legitimate peers.
Yeah.
And
All right.
it's TAFFDs.org, and there's a join us button. And over a period of time, we will ask for more information to better help members network with others.
All right. All right. That's great. That's fascinating. Um, uh, Staff's working on big collaboration or partnership with top organizations that can that people are really going to be interested with working with. Let's say the Googles of this world, the Amazons, the United States government, and all of that, because these are really hot areas that people from outside the United States and from different parts of the world will really, if you're a business person, you like to have some organization that can help you interface with the government or with the big techs around. So starts doing anything in that
Yeah,
regard.
and that's a big push, and that's why we're trying to be agile. We're going to go into a country at a time. We don't want to overextend ourselves. So right now we're starting in South Africa. And what we're doing is, well, when we start there, we're learning what members in that area need, and we are forging partnerships with major associations. And so we're trying to be agile enough to whatever country we go into, we will learn from the membership what it is they need, and we will forge partnerships with the organizations that can help them best. And so that's a big part of this process, is being agile enough to do that. And yes, what we will also be looking at, again, back to listening. As a leader, we're listening to the members and what they need. We want to give them exactly what they need. And we've got good case studies for this. What does this person really need to to do what it is they want to do? And when we suss that out, we can then forge a partnership with the organization that would help them most, or give them advice, or whatever it is. And so we're trying to be agile enough in each country, because there's going to be all types of systems to work through, and organizations and governmental barriers and obstacles to come up against. So we'll have one general theme, one general kind of approach, but we'll also customize it to each region. And so we're taking our time with that, and we want to do it right. And so we're doing it a country at a time, to not overextend ourselves. And but to that end, because we don't want to stall our ability to move into other regions and countries, is I'm refounding a thing called Earth Plexus. This was a student network I founded back in college, which was at the time the result of some research that I was doing on group problem solving and things like this. But the Earth Plexus was designed to increase communication amongst, at the time, the Soviet youth and the American youth, because at that time, nuclear threats were serious, and the talks were dropping. And the idea was that if we can communicate more and develop relationships with Russian youth now, by the time we're in our positions of power later, we'll have a relationship, and we can avoid a lot of the problems that happen between cultures and nationalities that don't understand each other. Then the internet came along, and so that wasn't really a necessary platform. But there's a whole story behind Earth Plexus, and it. It went away for a while as a need, but now it makes perfect sense to bring back, because what it can do is become a meta network of organizations like TAFFs and political organizations, and media organizations, environment, of very specific categories of groups, to bring them all under one umbrella, so that we can go into a region like Malaysia and start forging relationships under Earth Plexus that TAFFs can then come in and execute on and be part of. So I don't want to slow TAFFs down, because we are focusing on each country, and we're going to take it slow and do it right each time. But we shouldn't keep Malaysia, for instance, from having access to TAFFs early on. So that's what Earth Plexus will do. It will help organize and network different groups.
All right. It's been a very insightful, educating, and a really engaging conversation I've had with you, Tom. Tapping from your wealth of experience and knowledge has been nothing short of great and spectacular. And so I really want to thank you for making time to be part of this program and to share with us all of uh, these insightful ideas and interesting perspectives you have on these interesting topics. So thank you so much, Tom, for making time to be part of future discussions.
Thank you, Ugo. You're really good at what you do. It's just a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great. So, guys, you've had it all. TAOS as an organization is positioning itself as a channel, more like a channel as we go into this globalized world. It's positioning itself as a channel that allows this globalization to happen seamlessly between countries, between people of cultures and orientation and different ideologies. So the platform gives you the opportunity to be part of the global innovation that is really happening, and it's happening at your own pace. So you don't really have to be bottled into echo chambers that can pull you out from the wealth of nations that is being harnessed. So TAFS gives you that great platform and that channel to really be part of what is happening. And under the new leadership of Tom Ross, an amazing man, he's brought in fresh energy, he's brought in fresh blood, and he's brought in a sense of hope and enthusiasm that is really driving innovation and the speed of growth that we really need. So I encourage you guys, like you said, go to the TAF's website and be parts of this revolution that is really happening, and listen to this podcast to get more insights on amazing ideas from people who are really at the crossroads of what are all these things that we talked about today on the show. So thank you so much for being part of this program, Tom Ross, and thank you so much, you listener out there, for being part of the show. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button on this YouTube channel, and also follow us on others on our social media channels to be informed whenever we drop any new episode. So thank you so much, and see you guys next time.